We will have to sing the national anthem before we get to play. We are just going to sing the Posisibelela version and then from there move on. Okay, which is time, nothing else but time. I will start the song, you will follow me. I am the singer, there's only one competitor here, so stand ahead of me to hear. Okay, thank you so much. I'm closing the door because, oh yes, the door must be closed before we pray and sing. If you want, God can come in. Oh, okay. Thank you so much.
Posisigeleli Afrika Maluphakanyiswa uphondo lwayo izwa imithandazo yethu Nkosi sikelela thina lusapho lwayo murena kuluka sitshaba sa Yesu ufedise dintwale maswenye usiboloke 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 moreno usiboloke sitshaba sa Yesu sitshaba sa South Africa.
Thank you, Collins. You may be seated. Oh, maybe before you sit, Collins, I'm sorry. Sister Betty, can you please just come and pray just a little before us? Or you can pray where you are, Betty. Thank you so much. Can we close our eyes, colleagues, for Betty to report this function? Thank you. Bayede uizulu akekho ongafaniswa nawe akekho ongalinganiswa nawe ungunkulunkulu ophilayo ungunkulunkulu omuhle ungunkulunkulu Jehova nasekuseni namanje ekuseni siphakamisela kwena udumo lonke siyi-PPSA sikhona lana kule ndawo sisazobungaza Jehova sokulunga sizojabula imandla wonke simema ngaphakathi moya engcwele ngena ngaphakathi ube nathi biko konke okwenzakalayo kube khona ngaphakathi sizophakamisa Jehova sokulunga ubuhle bakho sizophakamisa umsebenzi esiwenzile ofisini babona amandla wonke siyabonga iba nathi Jehova sokulunga kizo zonke izinto ezenziwa ngaphakathi kwale ndawo mangabikho lutho isitha esifakayo mangabikho lutho unyawo engasiwe lakho engenayo ngegama nangegazi lemvana ngikhuza konke okuzongena ongosingo kwakho ngegama nangegazi lemvana. Father, we thank you for who you are. We love you, Daddy. We honor your name. We worship you. Sithakekho njengawe siyabonga dwala lapha kade sibonga umusa babona amandla wonke sibonga ukuthwalwa nguwe Jehova sokulunga sibonga isandla sakho somusa esiphezulu kwethu ngegama nangegazi lemvana. Thank you so much. Amen. Thank you so much. You may be seated, colleagues. Thank you. We are at the first item on the agenda, opening and welcoming. Colleagues, thank you so much for being here today to celebrate your own work. But before we proceed, before I call Ace, our acting senator, I would want to recognize the presence in our midst of the Public Protector of South Africa, Advocate Mrs. Mbebana. I would also want to acknowledge the presence of the Deputy Public Protector,
Advocate colleague, I would also want to acknowledge the presence of our acting CEO, Ms. Yadegine Musibane, and our COO, Mr. Mohadaba Charles, and our visitors. We have in our list also Mr. Luyanda Manugo, who is part of our audit committee. And then we also have media people, media houses. I see there is the NCA. I know that there is still a lot coming in. You know, they are just blocking in. Thank you so much. I don't have rules for this function. Safe to say we operate under COVID-19. We need to try and maintain the distance as much as we can. We need to keep our masks on our faces just to protect ourselves, colleagues. And then I also would want to remind us that we have in attendance, if I am not wrong, some of our colleagues who are located in the provinces who are joining this function virtually. And colleagues, wherever you are welcomed, and know that I love you. I may not see you, but I love you. Then the agenda generally is a family affair, colleagues. It's just us, and then there will be entertainment. Then there will be awards that are issued today. Then there will be toast and cutting of cake. Then there will be closing. The only person who is coming, who is on this way, who will be joining us within a short while from now. Wow! Oh, I didn't see the guest speaker. Professor Malikane, you are also welcome and acknowledged. My brother, I didn't see you. No, I must be honest. I thought you'd be wearing a suit like me. Now you are in I don't know if you are bringing this food, you know, and all that. I'm sorry about that. I thought you were a caterer. I must be. That's why yeah, but the professor is here. You are welcome, Professor Malikane. We are happy to have you here to discuss our issues. Thank you so much. May I kindly request our acting CEO, Mr. Musibane, to come to the podium and explain why we are gathered here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nimbe. Good morning, Pipi. Good morning, DPP. Professor Malikane, Mr. Mangubo, representing the Audit Committee as COO, our guest artists and colleagues here in the room and also in the provinces, and those who are joining virtually from wherever they are. 2020 has been a difficult year for everybody, globally and locally. It's been a difficult year for PPSA as well. However, we have something to celebrate still in this year before it ends. Why we are here, firstly, is for us to, as the leadership of the institution, to show gratitude, recognition, and celebration of the hard work that has been done by employees of PPSA in the year 2019-20, which started in April 2019 and ended in March this year. Not only during that period, but also during the preparation of financial statements and the annual performance report, which normally they are due on the 31st of May each year. But because of the challenges we had in the current year, in 2020, the deadline had to move to 31st of July. We all know why. We also want to appreciate the bravery and the commitment as well as the positive attitude that the employees of PPSA has displayed during that period. The COVID-19 brought about a lot of changes in how we do things. Social distancing, we had to work rotationally from May up until we were at level 1 of the lockdown. But colleagues were still able to work from their houses, some using their own equipment, their own data, their own resources to make sure that, firstly, we do not miss the deadline of the 31st of July. So we were compliant to the PFMA in that regard because of your commitment and your hard work. And I want you to give yourselves a round of applause. We also are here to honor colleagues who did exceptional and outstanding. Everyone did well, but there are those who did more. There are those who stood out, and those are the people who are here to acknowledge, to honor, and also award for their hard work. We're also here to extend our appreciation to our key stakeholders who have supported us in achieving this huge milestone. First is the Audit Committee. We appreciate the Audit Committee for their guidance, their support throughout the year. Secondly is the Department of Justice. Without their financial support, the institution would still be considered as not a going concern. Would have suffered deficits in the past years, but because the department has carried us, supporting us, understanding our vision, understanding our needs, they've always, for the past 3 years, without fail, supported us. And we want to appreciate the department for that. Thirdly, it's the Portfolio Committee of Justice and Correctional Services for holding us accountable, for playing that oversight role over the institution. They've done that so very well, and we appreciate them. We also want to thank the PP and the DPP for their leadership and for their support, and for also allowing us to have this kind of a gathering where we say to the colleagues, thank you and well done. We thank you, PP, we thank you, DPP, but also to acknowledge the former CEO, because he was here the greater part of 2019-20, Mr. Mahlang. More importantly, colleagues, we are here to launch our annual recognition of excellent service as an institution, because we are doing it this year for the first time, but we'll be doing it every year moving forward. The awards that we receive today, they will rotate annually, unless we've got a Muslim spirit that wants to keep the same thing for 8 years. But that's what will be happening. If you are receiving an award today, just know that there's a possibility that the trophy that you'll be holding, next year somebody else will be holding it, unless you make sure that you keep up the momentum, make sure that you keep up the same spirit that you had in the current year, lest others overtake you. As much as we've done well, colleagues, I normally make you an example with Sundowns. I'm not a fan, but they stand out somehow. They stand out. In soccer, of course. I always make an example with them. As much as we've done well and we're celebrating today, we need to make this happen continually. And for us to make sure it happens continually, it means we must always be at our best. Sundowns, after winning a particular trophy, they don't relax and be like, we're the champions in Africa, we're the champions, this and that. They still go back to the training ground. They still go back to the training field, individually and as a group. And if we're going to maintain a clean audit as PPSA, we have to continually step up our game. We have to continually sharpen our skills. We have to continually do our best each and every day. A clean audit is not achieved by an event, yeah, one day. It's daily routine, it's daily practice, it is daily activities that we do that will make us achieve a clean audit again. And I believe it is doable. You have proven to be resilient. 2020 with its challenges, we had 4 office closures due to COVID-19 infections. Between the 26th of June and the end of July, before we could submit our financial statements. But that did not deter you guys. That did not shift your focus. You still came to the office. Those who were in quarantine, they still continued to work in their private spaces. You pressed on regardless. And remember, guys, that clean audit was not our target for 1920. So you actually did so well. Now that it is a target for 2020-21, you can't miss it when you've proven that you can achieve it when it's not a target. Yeah. I remember that when I joined in July 2018, after we got an unqualified audit opinion, with qualified performance information and material misstatements on the financials, one of the colleagues said to me, actually, we've reached rock bottom. And I was like, wow, what a welcome, because that was just my first month of joining PPSA. Then last year, during our strategic planning session, I think I mentioned this, I said, a clean audit is possible in 1819. Those who were there will recall that. And during break, one of the colleagues said, you're only responsible for finances. You don't have control over performance information. I was like, it's not about I have control or not. I'm putting up a challenge for people to stretch themselves, and colleagues did that. And I'm so grateful, colleagues, for your hard work, your resilience, your commitment. You braved COVID-19, came out of your houses. Some of you with comorbidities came to the office, make sure you do the work that is required. During the hard lockdown, people had permissions to come to the office. They did that. Before the offices could be disinfected, before we could comply to the regulations that were set out, people voluntarily went to the office because they wanted to make sure that we do not miss the deadline. They wanted to make sure that we are compliant in all aspects. And colleagues, with that, I really, really thank you. In 2021, it's doable and beyond. So colleagues, this is to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Acting Chief Executive, Ms. Busibane. The words are powerful. When you speak of sometimes, thank you so much. I am also really encouraged that we fight this game today. If I don't get the fight today, then I don't know. Because, you know, I've been bold, guys. I never had an Audi, you know. But the time when we went to Egypt with the PP, the flight didn't take off the schedule. I prayed, I spoke with them. They brought it back the same day in the morning. We went there, Egypt, they were happy. I mean, all those really, I deserve a medal. I don't know. Colleagues, can I allow you to devour what is before you? Anything that is edible, that is before you, that can go down your throat. You can mix yourself. Colleagues, I must also acknowledge, you know, Miss Lee in her white dress. She just joined us. She worked tirelessly to make this, with colleagues, of course. Thank you so much. Before I waste more time, can I ask our audit representative, Mr. Luyanda Manoku, to come forward and corroborate what the ACE has said here. Sir, you can come and yeah, thank you. Thank you, sir.
Wow. Thank you, sir, for the invitation. Just wanna first appreciate the PPP, our esteemed guests, executive management, acting CEO, COO, our esteemed speaker, and the entirety of PPPSA. I think without all of us pulling together, this would not have been possible, certainly. I actually had no idea that I was standing here this morning because I was meant to accompany our chair, the audit committee. But be that as it may, I'm here now. I have a few words which I think on behalf of the audit committee would like to just share with the rest of the staff at PPSA, to say it has been not an easy year. A lot of things that have come our way, and us as the audit committee was to almost be at the end of it all. Once you've done what you need to do, to be able to give an assurance, to be able to tighten the grip, to be able to give direction where things needed to be tightened up, but also to be able to applaud where things have gone right. And personally, I come from that school where I'm a bit of a tough cookie. So I love it when we speak truth to power, when we're able to actually highlight the things that need to be tightened up so that we can, thank God, be able to achieve some of the targets which we think are on the achievable, maybe a year or 2 years down, but actually to see that we are able to actually achieve more than we thought we could. So really, I do want to congratulate PPSA and its entire staff, and to say as audit committee, it's sometimes never easy to be able to give such tough love, to be able to highlight some of the weaknesses that need to be tidied up. And but in many times, the results have proven that you've responded positively. And what we can say from now on is that continuously working together and really taking the cue that comes from all the assurance providers, a lot more is possible. I know a clean audit outcome is just but one of the indicators that something is really going well. But there's a lot more that needs to be done going forward to sustain and to keep what we have achieved. And I think if any one of us lets their guard down, it's very easy to go back to something less cleaner than a clean audit. So I really would implore everybody to say, let's see this as the beginning, as a first opportunity for us to turn the tide and let everybody in every part of the organization that they are tasked with to really do more than you've ever done before. Because it's easier to actually perhaps accomplish a clean audit outcome, but to sustain it is probably the more challenging state of events. So I would encourage everyone to say on all areas that we continuously bring to attention, when we share in the sittings of the audit committee, and we share with management the things that need to be done. Thank you for taking heed of those that counsel. Thank you for spreading it out throughout the organization to make sure that people do understand what they need to do, and the results are here to show. And I think going forward, all of us are committed from the audit committee to say, let's even do more. Let's make sure that all those controls, all those, unfortunately, sometimes consequence management, all those issues that bring integrity, that bring pure service delivery, that make our nation proud, that we really listening to their complaints and their concerns, and that service delivery is uplifted, and that those who are needing to be held accountable are absolutely held accountable. And that is what we're going to be pressing forward to. So congratulations. I'm not going to speak too much. I think I'm going to add it there to say on behalf of the audit committee, we really are grateful for your positive response and look forward to even a glorious year going forward so we can sustain this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Luyanda. With those good words. Colleagues, you know, I want to say something. It's just, it's cosplay. You know, before I called the DPP, you know, before the arrival of the DPP in the office, there were those photos that are hanging on the wall there. The president, then PP. I used to look at them, you know, people was under siege, they are long, those guys. And then the DPP are high. Yeah, well, then now there are 4. It's a balance of power now. You know, balance of power. I don't know, maybe I'm the only one who's seeing it. But the beauty that is there, guys. Even those guys, you know, those guys, they don't look beautiful. But now the HPP and PPP, you know, making them shine. Then the whole thing is marvelous. I don't know. I know those things, you know. Their office is beautiful now. The office is beautiful. May I just request you to come forward and say something? Thank you so much.
Oh wow, what a beautiful color I'm seeing in this room today. Beautiful smiles of Public Protector South Africa, beautiful people. Very good morning to you, colleagues. Good morning to you. Morning, Public Protector South Africa. Good morning. Hala, Public Protector South Africa. Hala. Oh, wow. Before I speak, please give yourselves a loud, a very, very loud applause. Thank you, colleagues. That's really for you. So each and every one of you, colleagues present here, colleagues joining us virtually, and all other participants and audiences here, I'd like to acknowledge the Public Protector of the Republic of South Africa, Advocate Mrs. Silonkhwelane, the acting CEO, Ms. Yalegile Lusibane, the Chief Operations Officer, Mr. Charles Mohalaba, Chairperson of the Audit Committee and members of the Audit Committee in their absence, executive managers, staff present here, members of the media, and our guest for today, my brother, my former colleague, Professor Christopher Madikana. Thank you so much for heeding to the call to come and speak to us today. You're welcome, and good morning, everyone. I'm overjoyous today. I had a flu and I was praying over it, and I said, you know, the devil won't win. I'm going to be here today and celebrate with colleagues, and my voice is going to be back, and I'm going to scream, hallelujah. I don't even know where to begin. We've had such a tough year, you know. But it said, with everything, when the going gets tough, it is the tough to get going. And you guys have proven that. You've proven the strength that you have. And you stood by your word, and you said, despite the other voices, it is the work that is going to speak for you. You are not going to stand on top of any platform and make noise, but you are going to let your work do that for you. And today, indeed, the work has done that for you. And it is not you who've assessed yourselves that this is how your performance is. It is an independent institution that doesn't only say, well, you've complied, but it says you've achieved a clean audit. In 25 years of PPSA's existence. And what that really means, especially with the decay in governance in our country, it means that despite that, there is excellence. And you are that pocket of success. And what it actually means is that that when to tell government to do and government institutions to do, you are actually practicing what you preach. And that is the greatest achievement ever. Sound? That is the greatest achievement ever. Can you imagine if Public Protector South Africa would not attain this achievement? We might as well tell show. Because we are not practicing what we preach. When you follow a preacher, you don't only follow what they say, but you follow their actions. So if we really want to be the voice of authority, the moral voice, not only in government, but the moral voice in South Africa, in the country, to the people of South Africa, we have to walk the talk. And colleagues have done exactly that. Colleagues have walked the talk. I'm so proud of you, colleagues. I'm really, really proud of you. Public Protector, to you and the team. Really, I came in just 2 months before. I cannot take credit to this, but I would really like to give credit to my predecessor, Advocate Kevin Malunga, in his absence, for having been part of this team that has worked so hard, that has actually showed off. You guys have showed off. Like, you know, I am really, really proud of you. And today I stand here and I honor you. There's a saying that says a prophet has no honor in his own country, which means that nobody ever honors a prophet in his own country. But we've decided that it is not going to happen, not under our God. You are going to be honored. With all the hard work, with all the stress, NTPO couldn't have said it any better. What colleagues have gone through during this year. We have lost families, we have lost friends. We have been sick as well. We've been affected by the pandemic, but you kept on pushing. Keep on pushing, colleagues. And really, what this function means for us is really to say to you, keep on pushing. Make it happen as you've been making it happen. And if it is hard to make it happen, find a way. Find a way, fix it. Nobody else is going to fix it except you. You are the last line of defense in our country. You can't throw your hands in the air and say, I can't. Fortunately, we are that institution that can't say we can't. Cannot be in our vocabulary. But you've shown how much you push. And it is in DPP that I really acknowledge that you've allowed this event so that colleagues can be celebrated, so that their work can be shown to be speaking for itself. That PPSA is alive, the doors are open, and PPSA is working, and PPSA is working hard. In saying so, colleagues, I just want to take you through a short of my journey in Public Protector South Africa, and maybe just as an encouragement for you, you know, that, look, it hasn't been an easy year. And what makes it not to be easy is that one can't fail. PP and I can't fail. We have to fix it. And we have to fix it as a team. There's one thing I believe in and that I always do, and I would ask colleagues to also do it. I embark on a lot of self-reflection. I took some time out last week and I did my normal self-reflection. I go out on retreats and I do some exercises, and as a person, nobody's perfect. I'm not perfect, you're not perfect. And I'll be fooling myself if I would stand here and say I'm the DPP and I know it all and follow me, you know. I need to reflect that if I were you, would I follow me? And it's a self-reflection I encourage each and every one of us to do as we go on this break that we are going on, because from the 23rd to the 4th, we are giving you a break. Ask yourself, if I was a complainant, would I complain to myself? Would I trust myself? Just a reflection. And that is a question I asked myself, and I asked it in 2 dimensions. And I said, if I was a complainant, would I be confident in myself? If I was PPSA staff, would I be confident in myself to follow myself? I have a life coach. We went on a retreat and we did some exercise. I've got a known weakness, and I say it to everybody, my patience levels are this much. And I think colleagues have seen it already. And it's work in progress, guys. I've improved over the years. And I'm hoping to improve even more, you know? But the critical question for me always is, if I was PPSA staff, how would I deal with my patience levels? You know? So we embarked on an exercise. We caught some fish, and unfortunately for me, I caught the biggest fish. So we had to do a sacrifice of these fish, and we had to burn them to ashes, and you know. And everybody's burnt quick like this. Mind you. We did this in midnight. I was tired. I wanted to sleep. The impatience kicked in. But you know what? I was committed and dedicated, and I said, I'm not going to fail this exercise. It's a test for me. And it's probably a test I needed, you know, because there is this part of me that I need to adjust, so that I can be proud to follow myself. You know what? It took 9 hours. We did it at 12 midnight. Others went to sleep at 3. Others went to sleep at 4 a.m. Guess what time I went to sleep? 9:30. My patience levels were tested to the core. I don't think I'll ever have a test like that. But you know, God was amazing. I sat there, I sang, I prayed, I rejoiced, I laughed at myself. And I said, yeah, you know what? God has got such a sense of humor, and he had to do this to me, you know? So I'm proud that I actually passed the test. And it's really my self-reflection. So I think I've improved, and I hope to improve from there further and further. I'm going to do something a little bit unusual to colleagues, particularly because of the situation that we are going through as Public Protector South Africa. We are unlike other institutions that it's sometimes said you need not to show your dirt in public, you must sweep it under the carpet. Unfortunately, ours is always in public, you know, whether it's dirt or not, whether it's made out to be dirt or not. But I just want to read a Bible verse to colleagues, just as an encouragement of what we've been through and where we are currently, and the spirit that I want you to hold into 2021. It's not going to be an easy year for us, but it is the year that is going to test us as a collective. It is the year that is going to test where each and every one of us stand in terms of Public Protector South Africa. Not individuals, but the institution, as an institution of democracy, as an institution of change, as an institution of hope, to those who have lost hope. I want to read to you and to those who do not believe in the Bible, I'm not imposing on the Bible. Each and every one of us must have something that grounds us. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's your cat, whether it's your dog, whether it's your ancestors, whether it's the Bible, whatever it is, as a human being, there must be something that grounds you. If you do not have anything that grounds you as a human being, you should be worried. And it means that you do not have a backbone. There must be something that keeps you standing, especially during these trying times. If you are a staff member of Public Protector South Africa, you must keep standing. If it happens that you trip, you must trip on your knees and you must stand up. And you can't be seen crying in public. You cry in your office and you stand up and you do your work. And when the complainant comes or whoever asks you, how are you coping? Your backbone must stand for you. I'm going to read from the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3. I'm going to read verse 1, and then I'm going to go to verse 9 up to 12. Everything has its time. To everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven. Most of us would know that there's a time for crying, there's a time for laughter, there's a time to be born, and there's a time to die. But within this time, God has given us tasks. Over to verse 9. What profit has the worker from that in which he labors? Ask yourself that. From the investigations that you do, what profit do you have? What is your profit? What is your purpose for conducting these investigations? I have seen the God-given task with which the sons of men are to be occupied. He has made everything beautiful in its time. Also, he has put eternity in their hearts, except that no one can find out the work that God does from beginning to end. No one. I know that nothing is better for them than to rejoice and to do good in their lives. And also that every man should eat and drink and enjoy the good of all his labor. It is the gift of God. The gift of your labor is to see the satisfaction in the complainant. Is to see the satisfaction of the public of you having taken a just decision, of you having brought hope to the hopeless, particularly during this era of you being the pillar of ensuring that there's good governance in our country, of ensuring the end to maladministration, corruption, and fraud in our country. And how do you do that? I can stand here, say whatever I'm saying, read the Bible, attempt to preach and whatever. There's one thing. Your own consciousness. Let your own consciousness drive you. When you open that complaint, no matter what I say, no matter what the PP says, no matter what acting CEO says, no matter what COO says, we will come and go in this institution. All of us with different ways of doing our work. You will remain. My 7 years will end. You will remain. You can't flip-flop as a person. You need to stand still. And it is your own consciousness that makes it to stand still. You have to be guided by your ethics. You have to be guided by your professionalism. And in that, your consciousness must drive you. If it doesn't feel good, it is not good. If it doesn't seem right, it is not right. And unfortunately, or maybe fortunately for us as lawyers, we are guided by jurisprudence, we are guided by the law. At times we need to put our feelings aside. We are one profession that needs to be real. We are one profession that works according to prescripts. As you interpret that law, your consciousness must guide you. The South Africa we live in must guide you. The South Africa we are from must guide you. The South Africa you envisage for your own children and for generations to come must guide you. I'm certain it is not a South Africa that's corrupt. It is not a South Africa that's fraudulent. Because it is a South Africa that your own children must endure. Your children must not ask you that you had the power. What did you do? We can't be taking our children overseas because we are running away from our magnificence. We must fix the country. We must find a way to make it happen. It is not me. It is not PP. It is each and every one of you. Find a way to make it happen. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, DPP. That is massive. That is massive. I really don't want to repeat or resuscitate all those things you said. But I must mention that you talked about the prophet, you talked about the fish, you also talked about Cain, and I identify with all those. Because I thought I was going to be a prophet, where I couldn't make it. But I love fish. Fish I love so much. You know, and crying also, I don't mind crying in the streets because that's why you get attention. And if you cry in your bedroom or in your, no one's going to take, but you must just imagine crying along, just crying there, you know. People are going to stop and look at this guy and come to you, hey, what's wrong, my brother? You know, things like those, really. But other things, DPP, I don't have qualms. Guys, DPP has said it, really, we need to be exemplary, you know. I love this one that, you know what, we can't run away from this country. I know it's not so. There is someone who is coming to render an item before our PP comes to speak, who can sing better than I can do. Please come as you see. Thank you.
Good morning. I heard everybody saying, let me greet the PP and the deputy PP and the acting CEO. So I'm following protocol. I hope this protocol, and there's also a COO, right? Is the protocol correct now? Am I fine? Yes, I'm covered. And of course, to you, program director, thank you for avoiding me this time. And thank you for having me. The Office of the Public Protector, when some years when we were inauguration, when we were chosen to be PP and we were congratulating you. In a setup like this, I was there and also sharing a song or two just to uplift the spirit. But I'm gonna sing a song that says Nyamagala, and I'm happy that you mentioned that sometime when you came here, it was not like it is right now. If you are now having a clean audit, it means you've moved from one level to the other. I think the song is just going in that direction. Amen. Igama lami uBathabile wakwaSikhosana Ngwasheng, but if you look for me anywhere, I am Bathabile. Just that I go with the double barrel and some of the people can't pronounce both my surname. So Bathabile, it's okay. Amen. We can go. Look what it said. Hey, When I look back to what the Lord has done, when I look back to who I am now, hallelujah. Amen. Before Is it okay if we dance a bit so that we can just shake the hands? Is it okay? Is it okay if we can just dance a bit? I know, so, I know we're having heels. Okay.
You can go to
You'll go there for food. When it's time for hours, you jump, you go stand next to them.
be sweating. Can you be sweating? Yeah, can you be sweating? Can you be Thank you so much, Tabi. Thank you so much, Batabile. Batabile, ukuthi sijabulile and uyasijabulisa namhlanje. And this is the day that the Lord has made. We shall rejoice and be glad in it. Siya celebrate namhlanje. And I'm glad ukuthi no DPP ukhona. Usibusisa shilo ukuthi yazi simile lapha sivula amadoda lawa simile and you know izimbokodo. So we have made it, and another Mbokodo, acting CEO. Thank you so much for leading this team. So guys, we can work together. Namhlanje will be celebrating Program Director Mr. Nyembe. Thank you. I'd like to acknowledge the DPP, Advocate Kalega, Intombi Yasema. She's from the royal family, by the way. You must know that. Yes, acknowledge acting chief executive officer, Ms. Lucibane, Professor Maligane. Thank you so much for gracing us today. We are so fortunate, you know, leaders like you. You know, we will learn a lot, and I will advise everyone when he speaks, open your ears. And this is not only for you, but for the generations to come. Acknowledge the COO, Mr. Mohalaba, but for some reason. Well, acknowledging the chairperson of the audit committee in her absentia, but thank you so much, Luanda, for coming in on such short notice. And it's good to meet you, and I hope we will have more engagements. Acting CEO is next year. Actually, it has been my wish, and I think we also have Umabuza in the office, who's also very passionate about the audit, and will say, PP, why are you not meeting the audit committee? Umabuza or Lita, she's one support in the office. Thanks to Litabo, Knox, and Tepo, I think Kuno, and all the social team and organizing. But thank you so much, Litabo, for availing all this. If it was not for you, you know, we're celebrating in style and, you know, class. And what loves there, where there's order, everything is there. The media team, thank you so much for being here. The most important people in the organization, staff, thank you so much for your hard work. We are here, we are celebrating. We are in that mood of celebration. But before I start, let's just have a moment of silence to honor Umbuyiseni Ngebe, our investigator from the Eastern Cape, who passed on through the road accident in September. And so that we
still continue to put the family in our prayers and so that they can be comforted, the colleagues he worked with, the communities which he changed or impacted. So just for a minute, a moment of silence. Thank you for that. And we are now at the end of the year, 2020. I'm sure you'll agree, the CEO spoke about that, DPP spoke about that. Well, Mr. Nyembagaga Ikhulumile, as the program director, it means he was fined, but it was a very difficult year for us all. Or maybe he spoke about it because he said he sometimes cries in his so it means the crying was also, trying to deal with this year. It was a very difficult year indeed, and life has changed so much. We've done things differently, but we kept going forward to do our work. Ace spoke about that through the tough times, level 5, level 4, we were one of the institutions which was supposed to be working during that time, because we are there for the hopeless, and we couldn't just stay at home and say, no, we are also scared of the lockdown. So I think the caliber of people we have in this institution, it showed what you are ready to serve, irrespective of the circumstances. And not only the investigation staff, but even from the admin support, from administration, from the private office, some of, in fact, 2 or 3 of the 4 of the private office staff, anyway, were infected in COVID-19, and during the difficult time, because they had to come to work, they had to make sure that they serve the public. So as the public protector SA, we had around at least 30 staff who were infected out of the 349 who contracted the virus. And we thank God that all of them survived and were healed. And our hearts anyway goes out to the families, the friends who never made it, who've lost their loved ones through this pandemic. And we know that we will still continue to be safe, we will still continue to defeat this virus. So we are also thankful to those who have recovered. Some of us, yes, as I indicated, we've lost our loved ones, our friends. We were also impacted by this virus. So I must caution though that we are not out of the woods yet. You know that they are saying there's a second wave, and I think we need to take the precautions which are necessary, which I was going to mention at the end of my speech, that taking precautions, wearing masks, distancing, washing your hands. Actually, washing hands is even much better, because sanitizing, sometimes you sanitize and it might end up being toxic. Washing your hands regularly, it's your responsibility. But I will go further, go as well, drink as much as possible hot water. Thanks to the Chinese culture, drink a lot of water. I drink a lot of hot water with lemon or even green tea. Just do that, because you will kill this virus. And eat vegetables, eat fruits. I'm not saying exercise, especially if you don't have money around your block, at least 1 kilo or 2 in the morning, in the evening, just do that for yourself. Now you're morning, come back with your family, just steam, buy eucalyptus and steam. So I've done my motherly responsibilities. Can we do that so that we are relaxed and refreshed and come back stronger? So collectively, we've achieved this celebration today. We've achieved first time in the history of PPSA. Somebody was saying, but you cannot celebrate the fish for swimming. Well, for us, it's an achievement, because we need to lead by example. And I remember, it's the first time, and we are so thankful to all the stakeholders in mentioning justice, which helped us so much during very difficult process. the Auditor General team who've been there. I think some of them I met with them because I was saying, yes, I know it's the accounting officer's responsibility, but I would want to help as well. Make sure we are also are involved as the executive authority. And I promised to Luyanda as well that next year, I think meeting at least twice a year, also understanding from our perspective what we need to do to support you more. First time we are achieving the payment of the SMMEs or our invoices within 30 working days. This was I don't know whether you are realize what we are doing. Besides our investigations and our impact, guys, when you pay the SMMEs, it means a lot. Those people depend on that money, and that's what government is trying to do. But unfortunately, again, we have public servants who are failing to do that, and people are complaining to us. But if ourselves, we are also subjecting the SMMEs or even business to the monies they depend to maintain their families, it's also a challenge. I remember going to the portfolio committee baptism of fire DPP, unfortunately, on the 19th of October 2016, if not mistaken, because I started on the 16th, it was a Saturday, the appointment on Monday, okay, on Tuesday, then appeared before the portfolio committee, and I was then had to present the report of my predecessor. I had to, stand for that report and say, this is my report. What I'm saying here is, in whatever circumstance you find yourself, investigators, acting CEO, when you find work which is there, you'll have to take that work as your own and, answer for it, whether you are praised for it or you receive the blows. That's what I did, answering those questions and as well promising there that we will one day achieve it in audit, because they were saying, but you need to lead by example. They didn't mind, but I was not there. I was 3 days or 4 days. You need to lead by example. And indeed, this has happened. I remember Mr. Mahlangu as well, thanks to him, because he also, when he arrived, he promised that the only thing I promised is that we will receive a clean audit. With CFO, I remember during the interview, I still remember a lot of your interviews, and unfortunately, some of you are not then keeping your promises. But she kept the promise because she was saying, no, I worked at labor, I worked here, doing clean audit. And I said, this is the woman we want in this institution. And thank God. So thank you so much, Mr. Sibane, for making us to reach this point with your team. Actually, Tiamo, you joined, and your team in supply chain management. Yes. So thank you so much, guys. You've outdone yourself. Not forgetting the investigation staff. 79%, in fact, achievement from 50%. That's huge. I mean, you've resolved around, the caseload was 15,245. You finalized 11,643. And this is 137 investigation reports. The 11,643, which media will never speak about. Till now, we need to focus on that and be thankful. We've changed the lives of those people because it meant a lot to them. UDPP was mentioning, can we do in self-reflection? One, or sit in your corner and ask yourself, what if it's me who would want to be helped in a pension, YAMI, which is delaying, or UIF or something, and no one is helping you. But you guys, all investigation staff, you've made sure these people receive them. Yes, the 137 reports, which I must issue in terms of the Public Protector Act and the Constitution, we are also changing the lives. We are also making sure that whatever maladministration is there, it's uprooted, and we are changing, we are correcting those administrative wrongs. So much is made of the fact that some of these reports are reviewed and set aside. From these conclusions are made that the office is fraught with incompetence, and of which is not the case. I mean, out of the 137 reports, it's only a few, I think around 5 or 6 over and Mundu, which were taken to court and were set aside. But the numbers don't lie, and that's nice because history will judge us fairly. So for each of the 2 reports from that financial year, which were set aside, in fact, it's 2 by the court, there were around more than 5,000 finalized investigations and interventions, which were not annulled, let alone challenged in court. So although COVID-19 did manage to slow us down towards the end of the financial year, you did manage to take your, you've put your lives at risk. You worked from home. Some of you had permits. You had to come to the office and you had to do your work. So these are indeed commendable achievements. As the Public Protector South Africa staff, you must all be proud of yourselves. In fact, give yourselves a round of applause. So, as speakers have said, DPP is, and with this kind of success, it comes a challenge. I think Miranda as well mentioned, how do we maintain this clean audit? And ACE said this year is the year which we should be getting a clean audit. So Tina, we have made sure that we achieved it before that. So let's make sure that we keep the faith, we just go stronger and stronger, and we make sure that we achieve it under the very difficult circumstances. We know that it has been difficult, it's still difficult even now. And I acknowledge that you are working under a very strenuous environment. Investigators, you've got an abnormal caseload for each of you, and we need to understand, and we've seen as well the attacks that seem to be aimed at diminishing this office for expediency. At any given time, we weather one storm after another, and we are perpetually in the eyes of the storms. You need to be like an eagle, and apparently when it sees the storm, that's where it goes upper and upper. So I think go back and let's just be those eagles. Make sure that in the midst of these storms, we excel more. Perhaps it comes with the territory, but at what cost, we will all ask. So I'm told as well that my predecessors have been down this road. I'm told that their reports were also criticized by politicians, civil society organizations, the courts, and the media. Maybe not to the extent we have seen in the recent times, but because in their time, there was no constitutional court decision which transformed their remedial action to something akin to a court order, thereby inviting endless litigation. I'm told that long before my arrival, there were threats of arrest, accusations of perjury as well, it's not the first time, criticism of shoddy workmanship on investigations, and potshots from angry politicians. And unfortunately, not only from them, we also have complainants who also, some of them would expect us to have findings where there are no findings, because remember, in everything we do, we need to have the evidence. So it pays me not because I'm the target, but because it is your work that is being unfairly criticized, investigation staff. You do all the groundwork, you interview witnesses, you write to me requesting that we subpoena witnesses before I delegated that to your executive managers and the COO. You analyze this evidence which you've collected and you interpret it. You draft the Section 79 notices, and you also prepare the reports after receiving responses from the people whom we are investigating. I can only imagine what all of these things that are happening do to your work drive and your confidence and your morale. But in out of your resilience and courage, I'm thankful for that. You don't despair. Maybe it's because, as I say, you have seen this movie before, and I think you have developed a thick skin. I would say to you, hang in there. We can do what is within our control. The rest will leave in the hands of God, or whichever superpower you believe in. I like what the DPP said, that, have a backbone, believe in something, because then you will stand your ground in life. So let's soldier on and fight this battle. So let us remain focused and avoid distraction. For many people in our country are yet to see the fruits of democracy, and they look to us to see them through to the promised land. Until everybody has experienced the benefits of democracy, our work is far from over. You know, I used to cry a lot when I joined this office because I couldn't believe why people are subjected to something like this. You know, you find a person being frustrated, they've waited for years for services, they don't have water, the Maspumelele community going there, and to me, you know, I wonder, how do you go back and sleep being a public servant when you have children playing in the midst of those canals? There's the feces, there's everything they develop, scab what's on their head, and it's raining, they don't have sanitation, toilets, they have to move 100 meters to 200 or to a kilo. We toilets which are provided for that. I mean, at night, what happens to women? They are being raped, children. So, you know, all those things we are seeing those things as the public protector. You go to communities, outreach, you do outreach, you see very gory stuff in this country of us, South Africa. But that's why I'm saying, we are their hope. Let's not lose focus. Let's not be distracted. In the midst of whatever is happening, Tina, let's look to that goal. Because the Ikemen community, for instance, they were sleeping in those tents, the child died there. But if we change their lives, because Tina, some of us, we have beautiful houses where we sleep, you know, you do your work and you come to the office, air-con offices, but I know we're coming from those communities, we have relatives there. So don't you ever forget about them. DPP said, let's go and do a reflection. We are going on holidays now, we are going back to those communities. Just ask for yourself, what if it's me in that particular community who's facing this particular challenge? So I will urge you, let's not lose hope, and let's continue doing the great work. And not to say I'm no longer crying, I do cry in my room, and you know, pray a lot and say, God, you are the one who's supposed to help us, because we are here as his battle axe, just to do the work. Finalists protecting the communities who cannot protect themselves. So with these words, I will further say to you, go get some well-deserved rest, and we are coming back next year, recharged. But then after doing that introspection in our communities, and it doesn't mean Uguti, because when you are not in investigations, you shouldn't help your community. I mean, I remember we level 5, level 4, Upeti, in my office, and I won't mention Uguti because she's in the private office. But in Sayabuswa, people were not having water, people were told to wash hands, to drink. I mean, she also felt it. I'm not an investigator, but I'll go, I'll phone, I'll meet the counselors, you know, phoning DPP, phoning myself, just to get help. And that community we were provided with water through her intervention. So what I'm saying is go back to your communities and also check for yourself where you can intervene. So hold on to your seats for next year, guys. The West is yet to come. The road is getting bumpier. And I know in the past you used to call me consequence management. I was telling you slow work. That was my name, but it helped. The clean audit. Okay. Yeah? So but tonight I'm called Oksala. And Oksala, let's do our work. Make sure with your team evidence is here. Oksala, as a matter of fact, well, that's a legal term, it's not just. So let's go and do the work. Now what I can promise you is that I will continue to be always in the Bible. Betty, or everyone, I'm encouraging you to read it, even if you don't read the Bible, possibly the Quran, there will be that woman whose children were murdered and by the Philistines. And when they were murdered, grieving and mourning, they were hanged there. She never slept in Kinyaka. She slept there. It was raining. It was very hot. I mean, in the north, we know it's very hot sometimes in summer. But she stayed there. She waited there. The smell, the stench, for the king to bury the family or the children properly. So that's what I'm prepared to do for you. I mean, I'm being bashed, I'm being called all these names, I've done it just because I'm standing for your work. I'll still continue to do that, irrespective of the threats which are there. We've gone through all, but then next year, hence I'm saying, let's be prepared to do that. And next year, remember when I joined here in 2016, I also told you about the old man who summited the mountain, who was deaf. And they were screaming and shouting, it's dangerous, you will die. Others were summiting back. But he went on and reached his summit. And when he came back, and they were saying, but how did you make it? And the son was saying, my father is deaf. So he achieved what he wanted to do. So even ourselves, in the midst of all this noise which is surrounding us, let's just focus on the work. Let's think about those old lawyer Gogo was saying Musina, who never had water, had to rely on the neighbors. Just think about those, the families. I mean, it's tough now. There's a lot of people who've lost their jobs, guys, during this pandemic, during the lockdown. A lot of businesses have been closed. A lot of people have been retrenched. Next year, we are going to be facing that. And what is going to happen? The public servants, which you are totally increment, what does it do then to the service delivery? How are they going to be reacting to that when they go on strike, when they go slow? Who is impacted is those Tinage will be coming there. So let's make sure that we go and relax and come back to do the work. My last word is travel safe home. Enjoy yourselves, and I think the more you stay at home, the better during this time. Some of the beaches are closed. Don't go to the river. Yeah. Congratulations to everyone. Let's praise God.
Don't go to the river, brah. Don't go to the river, brah. I have a river in my house. Just don't go to the river, brother. Avoid the river.
Thank you, PP, with those beautiful words, the stories you have told us. Thank you so much. You know, when Sister Tabitha was singing, I really was reminded of my pastor Puchet. I was there trying to maybe I was scared. The onslaught, particularly now, you know, there is a prison threat, you know, that is hanging on. I thought really about going to pull it or share on us. Run away, but from what you have said here, you are still with us. Really, I'm here to stay. PP, DPP, Hayes and COO, and our dear visitor from the Audit Committee. We are now about to receive Professor Marikano to give us what he prepared for this gathering. You know, yeah, maybe I should just tell you about Professor Marikano. Let me just read this thing. Chris Manikane is an associate professor of economics at the University of Witwatersrand, Johannesburg. He is also the director of the Macro Financial Analysis Group at the School of Economics and Business Sciences at the University of Witwatersrand. Professor Malikane holds a PhD in economics, obtained from New School for Social Research, New York. Yeah, it's a New School university. It's a university. You can Google it. You will find out what its orientation is. You know, he received the Edith Henry Johnson Memorial Award, New School, for social research in New York for an outstanding PhD dissertation in economics. He has done research on macroeconomics, monetary economics, financial economics, development economics, political economy, growth and business cycles. Yeah, I mean, at the time, you know, it's me speaking about this guy. You know, yeah. Well, I've been following Professor Malikane myself, you know, during his early days. You know, I can tell you a story, colleagues, that when I first met him at the university, I had visited there, I've never been advanced. And when we first met with him, he actually gave me a paper he had written. You know, I was blown away. It was speaking about the need to establish a political school for the ANC. I don't know where that copy is. It was well, actually, I didn't believe what I was going through. From there, some years ago, I then started calling him a professor. And that is how I became prophetic. Because he is a professor, you see. No, I'm not breaking, I'm just being honest. I'm just being, I mean, there are these powers, you know, all the, yeah, so, yeah, he's down, he's a professor, you know, and I'm really proud of him. But there's something else that is not mentioned here. He actually got a master's degree at that university with flying colors. He then went to a university in the US, you know, Fordham University, and he got another master's there. And can I tell you this thing? When he got that master's, US decided to enlist his name in the Dean's list, recognizing the outstanding quality. He is one of us. He is here, he's our brother. He is phenomenal, that's what I can say. He's got lots of information. Possibly he may give you information today which you need to unpack. Just one paragraph that we need you to unpack, and it may take you a week to I know that. So thank you, Prof, for coming. We are acquaintances, but when you rise to this, when the health protector say, please call me to come, and you say, yes, I'm going to come, we are really humbled. Thank you so much. The stage is yours. Thank you. Thank you.
Public Protector, good afternoon. PPP, good afternoon, my former colleague, and the acting CEO. Congratulations for being an alumnus of the West Business School. And colleagues, fellow citizens. So I'm going to speak as a citizen because the profession, the core profession of the PPSA seems to be confusing some of us who are looking from outside the legal profession. Sometimes it's confusing. So I'll speak as a citizen on these matters as the way I see them. So before I start, I would say the views I would express are not those of the PPSA. So that they are not misinterpreted. The PPSA, particularly the PP, you are already facing problems. So I don't want to add. But let me start by saying, Public Protector and your team, I'm sure that I'm not speaking for myself alone when I congratulate you and your team on this splendid achievement of achieving a clean audit. So achieving a clean audit means that you have efficiently and effectively used public resources for the benefit of the South African population. It means that under your leadership, the machinery of the 357 foot soldiers, which constitute the Public Protector South Africa, is steered in the most disciplined and conscientious manner. I congratulate you and your hardworking, disciplined team for having achieved this. This achievement is significant. Some say that it is not necessary to congratulate a fish for swimming. By so doing will be, if we congratulate the PPSA, we are congratulating a fish for swimming. The idea being that a clean audit is what you and your team should achieve anyway. But what these party poopers fail to notice is that for the past 25 years, the Public Protector's Office could not achieve a clean audit. It is only under your leadership that the office records this performance. So would it be correct to say that this fish, which is the PPSA, could not swim for 25 years? Certainly not. These party poopers attempt to play down the significance of this achievement. Others attempt to kill this achievement through silence. It is as if it never happened, but wait for a court to review your findings on certain matters affecting white monopoly capital. They would be the first ones to report screaming headlines. I know that when I mentioned the concept white monopoly capital, some in South Africa want to go underground. But this term is there and it has to be affirmed because it summarizes the experience of the majority of African people in South Africa. It summarizes actually our historical understanding of our struggle and the force, the social force that stands between us and the transformation of our country. Your leadership has attracted the most vitriolic attacks for standing firm on the side of the truth. Those who are fomenting these attacks are surely disappointed by your performance. Let me say that PP, the native African people of South Africa are powerless. And when I talk about the native African people of South Africa, I'm talking about the descendants of those people who are in South Africa who were dispossessed of the land by the white settler minority. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking specifically about those people. They are powerless. They are grossly underrepresented in positions of power in South Africa and extremely overrepresented in the lowest paid occupations in the country. There is no evidence that racial discrimination and segregation across occupations has changed since 1994. There's no evidence. South Africa has the highest level of income inequality on earth. 10% of the population earns almost 60% of the national income. The native African people of South Africa do not own the country's wealth. Yet they are 90% of the population. Just as much as they are actively marginalized from positions of power, they also remain marginalized from ownership of income-generating assets, and they have nothing to transfer from one generation to the next. So there are active measures. It is as if you are an African person of South Africa, there's an active process of excluding you from positions of power. And this has been found by the Commission on Employment Equity. With a total population of 59 million people in the country, a handful of 3,500, largely white people, own more wealth than 32 million people combined. The top 10% owns 86% of the national wealth, and the top 0.1% owns more than 30% of the national wealth. The 3,500 largely white individuals own wealth that is equivalent to wealth of 90% of the population. Half of the South African population own almost nothing of measurable significance. You know, Stats SA, when they do a study about wealth, they say that there's been massive progress since 1994. Many people are now owning some assets. When you check what assets they're talking about, it's like microwave, TV. So those reports, we need to read them critically. So these inequalities have endured for more than 350 years, and they are rooted in the property dispossession of the African people, super exploitation and oppression. In 1917, 3 years after the enactment of the Native Land Act, whose sole objective was, according to Sol Plaatje, to prevent natives from ever rising above the position of servants to the whites. Each white person earned on average 9 times more than what an African person earned. That was in 1970. But in 2008, each white person earned on average 13 times what each African person earned. The vast majority of native Africans of South Africa are poor and poverty-stricken. They survive on insufficient diet and raise stunted children. So the PP was talking about the experience she saw in one community where children were playing in dirty ponds of water. So this is a common experience where you find concentrations of native African people of South Africa. A vast 70% of native Africans in South Africa live below 1,300 rand a month, compared to just 4% of the white population. The unemployment rate is high amongst the native African people. It is 43%, and it's rising. And that of white people is 10%. So white people in South Africa basically living in an advanced economy, Europe, right? And the African people in South Africa are living in an underdeveloped country. So the plight. So if you look at the African population, the majority of them, vast majority of them are what we call the working class, and they survive on wages for income. But we know that the workplace is not transformed. There is very limited skills development and training of Africans in the labor force. Widespread violation of sectoral minimum wage legislation and labor laws. Native African workers' wages remain far below the material requirement for survival. More than half of South African workers are the working poor. They are working, but you can't see what they are working for. The skills of native African workers are suppressed. And we know that skills determine earnings, but those skills are suppressed. Just to give you a picture, PP, in 1994, only 15% of the native African labor force was skilled. Skilled being technicians, professionals, and managers, those categories of occupations, compared to 42% of the white labor force. So 15% Africans were technicians, professionals, and managers. 42% of the whites were technicians, professionals, and managers. Fast forward 2014, what do you see? By 2014, the white labor force was 61% skilled. 61. And what happened to the African labor force? 18% skills. So between 1994 and 2014, the skills level increased by 10% for Africans. But for the white labor force, it increased by more than 90%, percentage points. More than half of African workers earn less than 3,300 rand a month, yet it costs more than 7,600 rand to maintain a household with basic goods and services. This means that more than half of the working class households are running on a 130% deficit every month. There is widespread violation of minimum wage laws across the sectors of the economy. Native African workers are paid at least 35% less than the legislated minimum. So the minimum is here, 35% less on average is what people earn. In some sectors, especially agriculture, forestry, and security, African workers are paid as high as 50% less than the minimum wage. In this way, at least according to 2010 figures, 16 billion rands is being continuously extorted from low-paid native African workers on a monthly basis. 16 billion. The minimum wage is not the living wage. On average, the minimum wage, which is already widely violated, is at least 20% below the living wage. However, the living wage, like poverty lines, needs to be defined on the basis of the native African people's historical, cultural, and moral values. Because what is called the living wage is determined not simply by pure economic considerations, but you need to look at the moral, cultural, and historical values of a people. Right? What do we need to raise a family? Right? We need a decent house, decent water, electricity, and so forth. So all those things, they go into the determination of a minimum or a living wage. But if you've got a colonial labor market, then the moral, ethical, and historical element that goes in the determination of that living wage becomes very low. Because it is normal in a colonial situation to have people staying in shacks. So there are a lot of problems that we face. For example, PP, we've got a highly burdened health system where we have that the public healthcare system employs 30% of the doctors that are trained in South Africa. Yet it provides 84% of services it provides services to 84% of the population. So we've got 30% of the doctors servicing 84% of the population. But the private healthcare system employs 70% of the doctors and it services 16% of the population. So there are these inequalities that we face. And I'm saying to you, public protector, who is responsible for this? Who is responsible for all of this? If we come to you and say we are complaining, we have a complaint, somebody is not administering the resources correctly, would you be able to take up these issues? And if you do, who's going to oppose? On technical, legal grounds. So there are also hardships faced by the vast majority of African women. The situation with regard to crimes against Native African women in particular are not reported clearly. But nevertheless, over 10,000 female-headed households were victims of murder in 2017. This is more than twice the case of male-headed households. So in 2017, there were over 70,000 reported sexual offenses, which include rape, grabbing, and touching without consent. The majority of the victims, of course, are women, and rape constitutes 80% of these sexual offenses. Rape and murder are the leading crimes against women who experience domestic violence, committed mainly by boyfriends, ex-boyfriends, and husbands. So the questions that we need to ask ourselves is, why are these things happening? Is it inherent in men that they commit these crimes? Or should we look at the socio-economic conditions which breed the violence against women. So as long as we simply focus, that's my view, as long as we simply focus preaching to men, stop grabbing, stop raping, and all of that, without resolving the socio-economic conditions in which African people in particular find themselves in, then we will be not resolving the problem. So there's stress, there's social distress, high levels of unemployment, low levels of income, poverty, and so forth. And that stress breeds violence. And that violence then spills over into families and women and children and the elderly in particular. So why are all these things happening in this country? So I just want to talk about state capture, because I believe at the heart of all these problems is state capture. In the manifesto of the Communist Party, Marx and Engels wrote, and that was in 1848, since the establishment of modern industry and of the world market, the bourgeoisie conquered for itself in the modern representative state exclusive sway. The executive of the modern state is but a committee for managing the common affairs of the whole bourgeoisie. So from the beginning of the capitalist system in particular, the state was captured. But it could be argued that here Marx and Engels talk about the executive arm of the state. However, in his discussion about what he called the bloody legislation against the expropriated from the end of the 15th century and the forcing down of wages by acts of parliament, Marx approvingly quoted Adam Smith as follows: whenever the legislature attempts to regulate the differences between masters and their workmen, its councillors are the masters. The legislative arm of the state was therefore not immune from the capture by the masters. And that was a long time ago. Somewhere in Capital, Marx also notes that the English judges were ever so complacent in the service of the ruling classes against the trade unions. Indeed, the judges enforced the forcing down of wages within the limits that allowed capitalist accumulation to proceed unhindered. In his article, The State, Lenin wrote, every state in which private ownership of land and the means of production exists, in which capital dominates, however democratic it may be, is a capitalist state, a machine used by the capitalists to keep the working class and the poor peasants in subjection, while universal suffrage, a constituent assembly, parliament are merely a form, a sort of promissory note, which does not alter the essence of the matter. So coming to South Africa, let me refer to the little-known program of the South African Communist Party, which was adopted in 1944. In that program, the Communist Party says, now it's about us, South Africa. South Africa has many problems, like I've outlined. Millions of our people are poor and uneducated. They lack the means to lead a healthy, normal family life. They are forced to live on low wages because the mines, factories, and farms are owned by a small minority which controls the state in their own interests. That was in 1944. Later, in 1978, in this article, A Historical Injustice, Thabo Mbeki correctly wrote, in South Africa, the capitalists, the bourgeoisie, are the dominant class. Therefore, the state, other forms of social organization, and the official ideas, as we would find perhaps also in the media, are conditioned by this one fact of the supremacy of the bourgeoisie. That was Thabo Mbeki. Consequently, he continued to write, the capitalist class in South Africa is also heavily burdened with matters of state administration. It has taken on itself the task of ruling our country. That was 1978. So the capitalist nature of South Africa remains unaltered. In other words, the bourgeoisie, white bourgeoisie, remains the most hegemonic and powerful social force. It continues to control the state, as Thabo Mbeki said, or rather, it continues with its historical capture of the state. From the dawn of the capitalist mode of production as a dominant mode, the state was used to enforce this possession and to suppress the working people. So, Kukundima, one of the writers recently, was therefore correct in her article, State Capture. Ruperts are no different from Guptas, when she wrote, Johann Rupert and F.W. de Klerk, two Afrikaners, decided to join the fray over the alleged state capture by the Guptas. She continued to write, the utterances of these two Afrikaner men affirm that the only thing under threat is their own hold on the state that continues to benefit them. The Bruder-Bond is still in control of mines, banks, farming, and so on. It controls economic sovereignty of the state. I close the quote. So what are the implications of all of this for the Public Protector's Office? This office cannot pretend to be outside the capitalist state. It is an integral part of the capitalist state. At one level, we are made to believe that this office is part of the apparatus to strengthen our democracy, to hold the government to account. On the other hand, Marxist theory tells us it is part of the machinery to keep working people down. Yeah. How do these two aspects reconcile themselves in practice? So the Public Protector's Office cannot and is supposed not to operate outside the framework of capitalist control. You need to be controlled. So you can investigate other things, but once you start touching on the interests of the capitalist class, then you need to be aligned. Specifically, the office cannot operate outside the limits imposed by the hegemonic interest of white monopoly capital. If the office does stray beyond those limits, the other components of the state machine will bring it into life. From above, the Public Protector's Office is limited by the courts. Its related actions are binding unless reviewed by the court of law. From one side, the office is limited by the legislature. Section 194 provides how, ultimately, the public protector can be removed by the legislature. On the other side, the executive limits the public protector through determining the availability of financial and other resources. But once the process is initiated in the National Assembly, even if such a process may turn out to be unsuccessful, the president can suspend the public protector. In the meantime, while you and your team are still in office, PP, the option for white monopoly capital is to bully, threaten, instill fear regarding which matters to investigate, relating to who, etc., and which not to investigate. Public protector, the Act gives you the discretion to pick and choose which matters to pursue. You could have chosen matters that would align the office within the general framework of white monopoly capitalist interests. And in so doing, you would have found affirmation across components of the state machine. You would have received accolades from the white monopoly capitalist media, affirmation from the judiciary, cooperation from the executive, and standing ovation from the legislature. As for the judiciary, let me quote Chief Justice Mukwege. Because of the critical role that the Constitutional Court and the judiciary in general has to play in transforming our society through the Constitution, we owe it to this country and generations to come to make sure that we do not have a compromised judiciary. So the problem here is that if you have a compromised judiciary that is at the same time putting limits on what you do, then we have a problem. It's like you are swimming in that pool of water that is full of that stuff. So the Chief Justice continues, we've got to be interested to know how people get to be appointed to office as judges. You have to observe carefully. That's what the Chief Justice said. He continued to warn that when candidates are being interviewed to be magistrates or judges, there are some who are shielded from being asked critical questions through caucuses and the building of scrums around them in order to facilitate their passage to the position of being judge. To quote him further on this point, he said, "You must know there is an attempt to capture the judiciary. And the captured judiciary will never be able to use the Constitution as an instrument of transformation, because any captured member of the judiciary will simply be told, or will know in advance when so and so and so and so are involved. I better know my place. Or when certain issues are involved, well, the decision is known in advance. So and so cannot lose. Be on the lookout," he said. "Be vigilant, be forceful in making uncomfortable anybody who seeks to establish a pliable judiciary." This has come to pass, according to me. We know that the North Gauteng High Court, at the North Gauteng High Court, there are issues whose outcomes can be predicted. And there are persons that cannot lose based on judgments, the logic of which, as ordinary members of the public, we cannot understand. We see inconsistencies in the application of principles in the judgments. So if a judge passes a judgment that is confusing to some of us, then, as the Chief Justice said, it becomes difficult for us to hold that judge accountable. But we cannot keep quiet when we feel or we see that the judge is becoming inconsistent. Recently, the judgment on the SARS rogue unit says the public protector's report relies on what the judgment calls the widely discredited Sikakane report. As members of the public, we ask, by which process was the Sikakane report discredited? Who constituted the process to discredit the report? When exactly was it discredited by who? To further quote the Chief Justice Mukwe in his 17th Nelson Mandela lecture, he asked, "What are you prepared to suffer for? What a shame if just because of bad publicity or criticism from one source or the other, or the risk of being fired, you become a participant in stealing the resources that are supposed to help the poor." So the Chief Justice here is saying the PP and the PPSA must stand firm on the side of the truth. You must not seek to avoid bad publicity. And I would explain why it's important that you should pursue precisely, so for me, precisely those cases, those issues that touch on white monopoly capital, because this social force is creating a whole host of calamity for African people in the country as a whole. But you've chosen the path of truth, not a path of opportunity. You have chosen to follow the script of your act and not the script of opportunity. Where, when you are opportunistic as a public protector, we will see that now you are calculating. You first look at the matter, and then you say, okay, if this matter investigated, would it upset white monopoly capital? If it will, then you don't. You ignore the matter, or you delay investigation. So you are pursuing your work at this point without fear, favor, and prejudice. And that is where the problem is. Because the law is written, but to follow it to the letter, it becomes problematic for white monopoly capital. You are creating a misalignment in the state machine. You see, a machine which is securely under the grip of white monopoly capital. Until this was upset by President Jacob Zuma as head of the executive. You are the only sore thumb in the entire state apparatus, busy investigating matters that expose the corrupt operations of white monopoly capital and their leading stooges from inside the state machine. You are refusing to allow the office to fall in line with historical state capture. So, on landmark cases to me, I know that there is 15,000 or so cases that you've been dealing with. But what is of interest to me in relation to white monopoly capital is that while the North Gauteng High Court, which has become a seatbed of irrational judgments that make no sense to the ordinary public, you and your team must continue patiently to investigate matters without fear, favor, and prejudice. Many people believe that court judgments are necessarily correct and based completely on the truth. They believe that what the courts say is necessarily just. But anyone who takes a step back and look at matters carefully will not fail to arrive at the conclusion that there can be a distinction between what the court says and what is true. There can be a distinction between what the court says and what is correct. And there is a distinction between law and justice. Because remember, who took the leadership of the National Liberation Movement to jail? It's the court, applying the law, but was it just? So there are those distinctions that are becoming alive, that we are alive to. Therefore, continue tirelessly to investigate matters and people without fear, favor, and prejudice. Do not be cowed by what the historically captured judiciary might say, because the truth remains the truth, regardless of what the court says. Only the legislature can stop you at your tracks. And if it does, it will be because the legislature itself will be aligned to the historical capture by white monopoly capital. We are watching. Whoever initiates a process for your removal, we will say in bold, history has no blank pages. Oksala. History has no blank pages. So whoever starts a process will write, oh, is that a member of parliament? Fine. But down the line, when the truth emerges, they will be written, their names will be written in bold. Even if the North Gauteng High Court, that seatbed of irrational and inconsistent judgments, predictably sets aside your findings on white monopoly capital operations inside the state machine, your reports as public documents add significantly to the public archive for the people to understand and to raise their levels of consciousness as they struggle for a better life. The people now know that there is a case involving the South African Reserve Bank and Bangkok and later apps, in which government offered a gift to Bangkok and by extension apps. Judge William Hill found that there was wrongdoing, but nobody was prosecuted. The substance of the matter was never ventilated in court. We know that there was and perhaps continues to be a unit in SARS with intelligence capability that was used to spy on, among others, the late Jackie Slade. This raises levels of consciousness about SARS operations and makes us interested in the public, as the public, about how these institutions can be abused. There is the case about the integrated financial management system. We know that even the holier-than-thou institutions such as the National Treasury, touted as defenders of the public purse, can be caught in a large web of misuse of public funds. There is perjury and perjury, PP. The president goes to parliament and says Busasa paid his son 500,000 for a consultancy contract. Then he changed the story. The same 500,000 was a donation to his ANC presidential campaign without his knowledge. When he backtracked, he was hailed as having demonstrated true leadership. Then there is the issue of the sealing of bank records that the president has fought hard to conceal from the public. It puzzles many of us that even the ANC itself seems to be paralyzed about this matter. What is it that the president is hiding? And what is it that is holding the ANC from asking the obvious questions? Capture. I am left to speculate that perhaps there are also judges who have received monies from the president's fund. We speculate that there are obvious beneficiaries of the policies of this administration who are listed there. The list would contain big names known as protagonists of historical state capture. This issue casts a long and wide shadow on not just the president, but also on the ANC itself. Then another one, Minister Pravin Gordhan denied having met the Guptas, and later said that he did not have an independent recollection of not having met the Guptas. But then his chief of staff reminded him that he did meet the Guptas. The media calls this an honest mistake, and your finding is malicious. Many of us are watching the North Gauteng High Court on the perjury charges against you. We already know there is a high probability that you will be found guilty. It's predictable. They say one person on social media said that even if you have matric representing a president or the minister called North Gauteng High Court, you will be. So that shows the levels of confidence that the public has in this court. So that it is used as a reason. See, this case of perjury will be used as a reason to place the matter in the National Assembly so that a process to remove you is initiated. Once that happens, we are watching. The president might, that will be it. White monopoly capital wants you out of this office so that it can align. Despite this prospect, continue with your investigations, give the general public information, raise levels of consciousness, empower us with more information without fear, favor, and prejudice. So with these few words, PP and your team, I once again congratulate you and your team for the sterling work under these difficult circumstances. Remain unfazed by bad publicity. The truth never dies.
Amen.
Thank you so much, Prof. Thank you so much. But I just want to ask one question, by the way. The speech that you delivered today, this is a day by the first. Is it available for us so that we can go? I told you about reading one paragraph. So that we can, I hope it is available. It is available. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I don't have any further thing to say. Okay, now I remember. Colleagues, we have arranged it such that you have an opportunity to raise questions. Professor Malikane has told us, straight, guys. I don't know whether there is anyone of us who has a question, wants him to clarify something, I don't know, but this is an opportunity for any one of us to ask questions. Me, Prof, maybe the question that I can raise as a program director is the way you come across with your speech. You are more sharper on the race relations. You talk of white, black, and I remember our bishop, crying in public. Bishop Desmond to cry, crying for the rainbow nation. That it must come, it must happen. That's how you could interpret that cry. But here you are today, thrusting us back into white, black, white monopoly capital, and all this in this gathering of the public protector. why are you so sharp about this? Why are you fighting back? And that is what I would want to please Prof. Can you maybe come and explain, at least for me. Colleagues, you can conceive some questions, but I just want to know why are you.
Well, it's an interesting question because, you know, when you look at statistics, like evidence, like from Stats SA, there's a sharp racial disparities that come through. You know, I try to say, no, maybe the problem is not a race problem. Maybe there's a gender issue, right? So even when you look at the gender problem, when you look at the discrepancies, socioeconomic discrepancies between African males and African females, they are very minimal. But when you look at discrepancies between African women and white women, they're just vast. So which shows that the gender question is dominated by the race question. That, you know, no matter which way you look at it, the statistics, they just come out. So unless we confront this issue, you know, sharply, and also taking into account that once we raise the race question, at the same time, within the race question, as a primary question, inside it, then we can raise the class and the gender question. Then we'll move forward. But for us to jump outside the race question and then try to address the gender question, it won't work. We need to address the race question, and within the race question, address the gender and the class question. I think we'll move forward like that. Because as matters stand, even the benefits, look at the benefits on employment equity, they did not go to Africans. Skills development, like Stats SA, in fact, you find that for African young people between the ages of 24 and 34, their skills levels have declined since 1994. But for the other population groups, they've increased. They've increased. So we need to really confront this issue. And I did raise this issue to say, in China, the Chinese are here. They've got their vision, Chinese. I think when they check the leadership of the Chinese Communist Party, it's Chinese. But China is sharing a border with India. So there is a minority of people who are of Indian origin inside China. But the majority of the Chinese people are forging ahead with the plan for their country. The minority population has to align. You see, so yeah, I mean, you've got 90% African people, 90, but they own virtually nothing. This is a problem. I mean, even if you go, I can go on and on, it's so painful because even the Russians now are studying Afrikaans. Not Zulu, not Ndebele, Sotho, no, Afrikaans, the Russians, because that is where they do business. That's the people they do business with. Mm. You see, but you are a 90% majority. I mean, I can go on and on. You even see it with the political parties, right? The people of South Africa gave the ANC and the EFF more than 2/3 majority in this parliament. And when you check, the ANC and the EFF resolved on land expropriation without compensation. Common, both of them. But they're supposed to act, right? People voted for these resolutions, but when it's time to act, they come back to the people. They want the land. You know, I'm sure you want the land. You want free education, there's no money. You know, you want the mines, you scare investors. So there's an attempt to always put in the back burner the interest of the 90% of the population. And this country is not like Malawi, small country with no natural resources, heavily reliant on agriculture. No, this country is very rich. Right? You've got countries in the Middle East that rely on oil, purely on oil. Building skyscrapers, creating jobs for their people and so forth. This country does not have a single mineral. It has many minerals in which it dominates. Platinum. We can be a monopoly in platinum. Manganese, coal, you name them. But the population is as if we're staying in the desert. I don't understand. This is an issue that we need to resolve. Any progressive person, even a white person, must be worried about the socioeconomic conditions of 90%. So that's my short answer.
Okay, thank you, Prof. When I raised the question, because I know that the issues are very sensitive, but I am happy, Prof, when you say you haven't created this. You are just reporting the objective reality. You are saying the statistics have showed you figures and you've interpreted the figures and you are telling us that the figures are saying this. So it's not you basically, it's the concrete reality. You are just an agent telling us about what you have seen. Thank you, Prof, for saying that. I don't know whether there will be any point. There is no stupid question, but we are about to. Oh, my brother, so tell my brother. Come, my brother. No, come and stand here. I want you to stand here.
There.
Yeah, so that you can ask, my brother.
I'm going to speak more than you. It's fine.
Yeah, I know you speak it. I will, because there will be music from here and there will be food. You know why I'm celebrating a clean audit? Meaning we're not operating on overdraft. So you must be quick, Papa.
Okay, I'll try to be very quick. Prof, thank you very much for a very, I would say, issues that you've been touching on, they really touch my heart as well. But my question is really on the basis of change going forward, that understanding the historical context and everything else that you have raised, the current generation who continue to be the victims of a concept called banking education, which continue to produce, I would say, people who just follow the line, people who can't go outside the line. Where do we start? Do we continue with the very same mentality of thinking in a line? Or you need the so-called unconventionalists now? And in the workplace, where does it start? For almost everyone. I like the fact that you also touched on the issue of gender, because I share the same sentiment that until we address the fundamental issue, the main problem, from which most of the problem starts, nothing is going to change. But the agents who are supposed to start the change, where do they start? That's my question.
Thank you so much, Salvation. Salvation. You must underline that. Salvation. Thank you. Colleagues, I'm trying to rush time now. There is still some functions or some that we must perform in our program. There's prize giving, there is food, there's some dancing that must take place. There's some driving. And I don't know whether there is any other question before I allow the prof to respond to. Oh, yes. Yes. But don't you want to come in? Okay. No, I think just walk in so that you can, so that everybody can hear you.
Can I not stand?
Okay, stand.
Thank you. Mine is not a question, but to say thank you to Prof. You gave us a layman's breakdown of what's currently happening in our judiciary and also in line towards our office. So it then again came back because when people were talking, it gave us a time to reflect on the kind of women who's leading us. Guys, our leader, our number one, she's going through a lot. And I think after what Prof broke down for us, it's only right that we actually appreciate it. Because I don't think there's a person who can go through what you go through and still stand up. You go through a lot. Every single day you go through a lot. So I know it's a celebration for everyone, but this woman don't care.
Thank you, sis. Any other, or is it fine? Can I allow Prof to then respond just to these comments and then we move forward with our. Okay. Prof, Salvation is asked.
You know, the question that Salvation has asked is what is to be done? I've come to a realization that African people are fragmented. And usually the first thing we think about is a political party. You know, but what I think is required is a form of organization that will unite all of us on the basic minimum vision as the people, as African people in this country. Because remember, we last met in 1912. As African people, we last met in 1912 when the South African Native National Congress was formed, right? It was only Africans there, and then they said, okay, let's go to the Queen and ask the Queen to be included in what is called South Africa. Then it never happened, right? And then South Africa, as the name says, it's not ours. Really, the name is not ours. It was white people who got together and named themselves South African. Right? It was their name. The British, the Afrikaners, and whoever was there, they named themselves South Africans. They excluded us. So we're supposed to meet again after the exclusion as Africans to say, who are we? You see, who are we as Africans? Because the people in Zimbabwe, they were under Rhodesia, but they got together and said, we are Zimbabweans. Shonas, the Beles, and so forth, we are Zimbabweans. We are fighting for our land. You see, the people in Northern Rhodesia, they said, we are Zambians. All these ethnic groups came together and said, we are Zambians, we are fighting as a unit. Even the Namibians got together and said, and in fact, they stopped the United Nations in 1968. They said, this thing of Southwest Africa, please, it's insulting. We are Namibians, you see. So they identified them, all the ethnic groups identified, that were dispossessed of the land, identified as Namibians and fought. As South Africa. so the Khoi, the San, the colored people, the Zulus, the Tswanas, and so forth. We never got together to say, who are we? As a collective. That's why our name is the same name as that was created by white people. So the starting point is to organize ourselves unashamedly as a people. You see? And it's not about building a political party, but building a social movement that unites all of us on the basis of a minimal vision. That political parties, if they want our support, will have to share. If they don't share it, then we don't vote for them. You see? So we need to start that process to organize ourselves. Yeah.
I'm very much on the basis of banking education, because banking education, what it does, it creates people who think just, even if you say, no, there's another way, they only see this way.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with the current generation. We are not I like the fact that you are saying we last met in 1912, basically meaning that since then, no one has made an effort outside this line that has been set. Yes, I'm very much interested in your views as to this generation now that is a victim of this education system that creates this kind of like robots.
Yeah.
How do you get out of that robotic mentality and start exploring other solutions?
You see, once we form an organization that unites all the African people, the 90% of African people, once we have that instrument, then that instrument will be in a position to educate our people patiently. It's tough, but we'll have to have the patience of educating our people, who we are, where we come from, and so forth. Our history, our achievements in science, mathematics, all of that. So without that instrument that coordinates the education of the African people in South Africa, will remain fragmented. Because the public education system is not assisting, like it's alienating. So I'm caring about that instrument that must be created. Not a political part, but that instrument that says, as African people, I mean, we're not even respected. Okay, let me stop. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, colleagues, I am now closing the Professor Untitled chapter. Thank you so much. But just to dovetail what you said, Prof. Yeah, you are right. You know, a simple thing, colleagues. When I started here, I had to introduce myself. I said I am Sonia. So it begins with knowing yourself first. I think that is fundamental. Yes, we are in Africa, we are Africans, but we are not homogeneous in Africa.
Yeah.
You know, we need to be South African Africans, but not in terms of the direction. We need to first identify ourselves. Who are we? Just like I have said, I am Sonia. She is Christopher Manikane. The PP is Busisiwe Mkwebane. You know, before she becomes an advocate, she becomes a public protector, she is Busi. You know, so things must begin. Oh yeah, she is Busi. So things must begin where they begin, as I understand you, Prof. Thank you so much, Prof. Thank you so much, Public Protector DPP, for this opportunity, for just meeting. You know, you say we have met since 1912. Well, we are starting to meet as a Public Protector to giving pricing, you know, and all that, you know. Yes, thank you. Colleagues, Sister Tabitha is ready to come and shake us around, you know. Yes, thank you so much. And then from here, can I then ask the Public Protector, the Deputy Public Protector, and the Chief Executive Officer to prepare for distributing and all that. Okay. Thank you so much. You continue eating there, continue drinking, you know. I'm not going to.
Okay, we have
Thank you.
I think
Okay, so nothing's gonna.
I am back again. And this was still digesting from off. Yeah.
Just a second. Baba Siabon, ne? Baba Petri.
Okay, can we clap?
So I'm gonna teach you this song. It says Baba Nia Tan Music Amala. Baba Nia Tan Music Amala. Baba Baba Nia Tan Music Amala. Oh Baba, oh Baba, Nia Tan, yeah. Oh Baba, oh Baba, Iyatanda, yeah. Oh Kamalako, oh Kamalako, oh yeah. Oh Kamalako, oh Kamalako, yeah. Can we say it again? Oh, Baba, oh, Baba, Kiyatana, yeah. Oh, Baba, Kiyatana, yeah. Oh, come on, yeah. Hey. Oh, come on, yeah. La Ale colene, come a listen again, oh. Ale colene, come a listen again, oh. Ale colene, come a listen again, oh. Ale colene, come a listen. Ale go, ale go, ale go. Ale go, yeah, yeah, yeah. Ale go, hey. Ale go, ale go, ale go, yeah. Ale go, ale go, come to listen again. Alika, can you raise your hands for a minute? This is our Malako. This is our Malako. Do like this. Yeah.
Everyone is listening.
That's interesting. Check. Let me come I need to engage with you just one at a time. Come on, oh, this side is good. Come on, yeah. This is Kamala. Okay.
Good afternoon. The moment has arrived. And please don't be jealous. People will get you. It's on.
Thank you, Janice. Okay. The moment has arrived where we get to know who gets what for what. We have, as per the program, we've got 6 categories, and then we've got 2 special awards. And I'll be explaining what each category is for. There is also second place in some of the categories. We have a tie in one of the categories. We have a category on best performing team for 2019 financial year. That is a team, or those are teams that did not have material misstatements on either financial statements or the performance information. That is a decider for a clean audit. You see, auditors won't write on the report clean audit. You just see when you read. If there's no paragraph that says you have not complied to section 40 of the PFMA, if there's no paragraph that says there are material misstatements, if there's no paragraph that says non-compliance to procurement laws, etc., then you know it's a clean audit. They will not write it. Now, the winners are in this category. Is it not obvious?
Yes.
Finance! These are the people that, on average, they pay suppliers within 9 days. The requirement is 30 days, but they pay on average in 9 days. Yes, go get your award before I call the next.
DJ.
Finance includes supply chain, includes payroll. Where are the people
in finance. Asset management, there were no issues on assets, so go get your award. In the absence of the acting CFO, they are receiving the award for ensuring that our financial statements are free of material misstatements. Well done for all the hard work, the sleepless nights, the stress levels, the anxiety, the debates with the auditors. Thank you. Thank you for making us shine brighter than diamonds. And the team that gets equally the same award, they are not second runner-up. They are, I said it's a tie. It's strategic support unit. Ms. Mutiba. She didn't do this single-handedly, she worked with a team. Tepo Kuno was one of them, Charlotte was one of them, Masati, Matau, Khaba. Yeah, I may be forgetting others, but those are the names I recall. They make house chair, you guys. These teams that make sure that our performance information is credible. It stood the test of scrutiny by internal audit and external auditors. Well done, guys. Well done. Well done. Thank you, Ms. Mutiba, for all the tears, the stress, and when you bring it to me, I just blow it out of proportion. When you say files are missing, I call everyone virtually and we speak. Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Mutiba, and congratulations to finance as well. The most improved unit, yeah? Most improved. Team that received lesser findings in 1920 as compared to 1819. Do you want to guess? Okay, I'll just go to the second place. The second place is Human Resources Management and Development. Mr. Chelera and his team. They've improved by 83% compared to the rest of the units. Congratulations, Mr. Chelela. Oh yes, and Mr. Tebel in absentia, the acting EM there. Thank you guys. And the first place, the winner of this category, with no finding in 2019-20. Yes. ICT. Mr. Kaleni's team. Well done, guys. Corporate services is cooking them. I don't know if they're gonna next year. ICT had 0 findings in 1920, guys. In 1890, they had only 4, and they were all administrative. That's how good they are. Well done, Mr. Kaleni in absentia and Mr. Tebele. Congratulations. You decide either to have the Mosimane spirit or someone will take it. Okay, the next category is the most compliant unit. The most compliant unit. Timely submission of quarterly reports and evidence for audit purposes, because your report can be submitted, but if it's without evidence, it's incomplete. So these are the people who make Machibane's life easier. Second place, Free State Province. Under Ms. Teja's leadership, I will request the COO to receive the award on her behalf and on behalf of the province. Thank you, COO. That's PII inland, ne? Yep. On time with evidence. It's doable, eh? Yeah. And the winner in this category is Eastern Cape. You again say they are yours. Eastern Cape. I wish it was Mpumalanga because I'm from there, but it's not. Well done, Eastern Cape, and congratulations. Then the last category is the most responsive unit. Yeah? A team that submitted their year-end information in the most complete, accurate, and most responsive form. And there's evidence to back this up, colleagues, it can be audited. Yes. Yes. The second place is Western Cape. Wow. Yeah, I hope that COO, you are collecting all these awards. In the absence of the relevant people, you the men in charge. Thank you. These are the people who don't cause us headaches. They submit, they know the timeline, they know what supporting document to give. Very minimal errors on their information. Yes, you may as well stand there. And the winner in this category is Free State. Congratulations, Erica, Mr. Mashinini, and the team. We then have a Rookie of the Year. This is an individual or a team that has joined PPSA in the 1920 financial year, but they've made immediate impact. So some of you already know you're out. You were there before 1920, so there's no way it can be you, right?
Right
Now, the winner, there's only one. It's internal audit. Newly established in 2019 within PPSA. Newly established function within the office. For years, the internal audit has been managed by a service provider. This is the team that started an internal audit function within PPSA. They are very flexible. Their impact will felt it. Sometimes unhappy as you were, but we felt their impact. And they're very flexible. The audit of financial statements and annual performance information before submission to Auditor General and Treasurer on the 31st of July, they did it within a week or less. And they are only three. And they are only three. Thank you so much, guys. Then we've got the Intern of the Year award. Intern of the Year award. All of you are not interns, right? There's just a few AI people. So if you didn't get an award up to this I connect. The second place in this category. What's that? Yes. I see that they are already presented. Okay, second place, and I will read why. For doing most accountants' duties with less supervision, was a point of contact between the audit team and the PPSA admin, processing of payments to suppliers after performing reconciliation with less errors. Second place is Mr. Patrick Manyati,
Yeah.
A very humble gentleman. A very humble gentleman. Well done, Manyati. And the winner in this category for her outstanding performance and verification of files for the annual performance report, diligently and painstakingly went through majority of the investigation files, verifying accuracy of information, worked an average of 16 hours per day at no extra cost to PPSA. She's described as a hardworking, paying attention to detail, and with a strong work ethic. That is Mahlanzi down. Mashebane, please receive it on her behalf. This is an intern during level 5 hard lockdown, was assigned a pool laptop, working from home because she had demonstrated her ability and commitment. The only intern in that team that was working with Macheban, of the 11,000 files that they had to verify, most of them were done by Mahlanzi. We also have a certificate to acknowledge excellence still within the intent, although it has nothing to do with the audit. For his creativity and commitment to PPSA throughout the year. Although he wasn't directly involved in the audit. I am not done explaining and
No need, Theo, no need.
His presence is very impactful. Especially when we're doing our APP and our annual reports for publishing. Thank you very much, Mr. Of course, under the leadership, yes, of course. With him in the institution, we're not outsourcing design and layout of anything. The certificates he designed them himself. We only bought the frames. I can mention a lot. Thank you so much. Colleagues, it adds this level of an intent when we can sort of tell you where you're going in life. You guys, 5 years from now, I may not see you. I just want to connect with you on LinkedIn because I want to witness what will be happening in your life during that I said to the finance team when I started in 2018, you don't get a position and therefore get an anointing baptism to do the work. You become before. These guys have proven they are ready to do anything. No complaints, no asking for extra this and the other. They work.
They just work.
They work. Now we see why their bosses were saying, please retain them. And we are glad we did. And then we've got the last 2 awards. A special award from myself. It goes to an individual who has demonstrated, firstly, respect for authority at whatever level. His support to both core and administration, outstanding research work, excellent writing, and knowledge. That is none other than advocate. In his absence, I will ask Lee to receive the award. Please receive the award on behalf of the board. The next one it's from the PP herself. After this, the PP will come and announce that special award. This was only a start, colleagues. Siabuya next year, more categories. We don't know whether there will be people retaining or be exchanging, but Siabuya. Oksala.
Yes, I think it's the first time we're doing this, and thank you so much, CEO. And DPP now, and even yesterday I said, but this is unfair for us to have only one category, and I had to impose myself, who's a CEO. And I think going forward, we will have the category investigations, because that's the core, and the issue of also performance audit, which also they need to compete, and I mean competing and excelling it will help, because there's a lot of them who are doing the great work in that category. So unfortunately, because this was organized this way, I said I'm going to impose myself. Before issuing this to the PP's award, which it's only one, but I will start with one appreciation. Though there's no certificate, maybe it will be designed, but it will go to you, acting CEO, because if it was not for you, and then the next one, if I do acting CEO, hence I said earlier, during the interview, she was this person who was, showing what she can do for the organization. And indeed, she did that. Hence, we are here. And I know she will continue doing that going forward. And thank you, HCO. We are from the same province.
Okay.
So that's why and then the next appreciation role is Ifke Nasasiko. Unfortunately, because these are people who made my life easy. The next one goes to Opasihan. In the midst of all what we've been going through. He's standing there, he's speaking, he's my mouth, because whatever he says is what I say, and he's also facing all the challenges, being a trained journalist, whatever is happening, and as well trying to advise me. Sometimes I go off the tangent of Uppsala, but he's still remaining there and making sure that as an institute, because he is our mouthpiece, he's the one who makes sure he image institution, or as well we try by all. Agana team, well, we don't have a lot of people, and with the communications team, there are few, but they are trying their level best. So for me, that is what I appreciate about them. And then the last one, I would say in the investigation team, when CEO Ati Mahlat Van Road, you'd want to even follow where they are going. I was saying to DPP, yes, if I wish we can as well replicate them to all the 349 staff. Not to say you're not doing, you are doing a lot, guys. We appreciate it a lot. But unfortunately, in such instances, we will have those few individuals. So in the investigation branch, which is one we will have to introduce as well, have the categories. For this one, I was thinking about Upriyanka. Yes. So Upriyanka Ulidwa Urodni Matabu. So this goes to the Rodni Matabu first GGIT. So most of those reports which we've been calling, vilified, they are from that team, and they work so hard. They don't sleep. They do their work. Hence, I say, no matter what is said, indeed history will judge us fairly, because we have all the evidence. They, try their level best to incorporate, to comply to the law. And Bianca is at an investigative level, not even a senior investigator, but the kind of work she is doing, I would say she has excelled. So this is for that particular team. Thank you so much.
Why are you doing this thing? Hey,
I declare like this.
You are always behind the camera. You are always behind the camera.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. Thank you, PP. Thank you, PP, for dispatching the prizes and the awards. Yesterday, I talked with Advocate about this thing. Was just asking this book that I had one day. I said, "Hey, my brother, come tomorrow. I'm sure." Now I have to answer to that guy. You know what I said? My brother next year. I said, thank you. Okay, then we are closer and closer getting to the food.
Yeah.
But before we do that, there is a cake that must be cut. But there's no feeding each other like in weddings. You see this thing? No, we're not gonna have that. When we speak of a cake, people think of that. You know, two people, this other one's giving this one, and this one is opening his mouth, and one is putting that thing. But anyway, PP and TPP, may I kindly request that we cut the cake now. Yeah, we cut that cake, PP, and then TPP will offer us a toast. And then as we cut the cake, PP, you are going to cut me, and then TPP will toast. So you must just try and manage that, because there could be some, maybe you see this one wants to cut, this one wants to toast, and then, but I believe in you. I believe in you.
Remember this.
Can we do that? Where are the cameras, people with cameras, and so that they can wait. Thank you.
Please open it. I want to see if it is in focus.
Don't they toast it first?
No, so that's what they are seeing. This one. I will check.
Everyone to open their wine and eat. How do you cut a cake without opening wine? Oh,
This one.
your guy.
Yeah, this one looks. Save it aside. Save it aside. Yeah, we get a cookie. Please step in. Just. Let's see this. I want there's also another one.
Hey, colleagues, not always phenomenal. You know, I must give a prize.
A pie.
Not always phenomenal. Because it reminds me now that there are bottles on your table that must be open, that serves, that go hand in glove with the toast, which will be rendered by TPP. So guys, please take those bottles and let's open them and let's pour there, you know, and do it that way. You know this thing, guys. I mean, you can't behave like you don't know this thing. You know, you do it every time.
That shine is taking away the. Let's see this. Let's just look at it.
Guys, some song. PP and TPP want some song.
Oh, play the music.
Yes, guys.
Which song? Do you have any idea what Regadala thing? Jazz.
Or Dala piano music. Dala piano
Piano is my own.
DJ. DJ. Just play something nice.
Deep house.
Higher speed.
Don't play too far.
Let me play this one.
Okay.
Thank you. No, I don't take these things like it's so. One for you, my brother.
You know, those people have been loved since it's time to love now. You know, because there are people who have never loved since you came in. Now it's good time. But I have a problem. You know, I am informed the food is outside. Am I right? Not only told me that the food is outside, but there is a process that will lead to that food. The table here, which is occupied by the PP, the DPP, our guest speaker, Professor Malikane, and then Loyanda, the CEO and the CEO will actually depart this room to go and mix itself with the food. And then, I don't know, I will, you know what, guys, let me just allow that table to go to the food is outside. Am I right? Am I right?
Yes, after vote of thanks.
After vote. Oh, there's no, but don't you thank after having eaten? There should be eating. No, I refuse to agree with God. Let them be eating. As we eat, then COO, I see he wants to go, he's got lots of work. And then he then gives us a vote of thanks, and then that's it. So can you see, guys, please go. This table. Okay. Okay, no, I'm just checking. I want to. Okay.
Salvo, go send us that email.
Was it the email?
Edit pictures is in there.
The picture. You want? No.
Yeah, just when you send.
You send pictures of
Oh, I hear what you're saying. And my brother, but you are going to step because wait a bit. I just want to so that there is order. Okay, can I allow? Oh yes, this table. Yes. Then I don't know. Aren't you able to go now and have a queue there? Or maybe they should come and then we go.
Just even where did you send?
Okay. Social distance. Social distance. Okay. Social distance. Let's wait for you. Okay, my brother. Can I dance a little bit my brother?